If you're feeling stuck in midlife, you feel like you're on the verge of having to do something radical to break out of it, don't. You don't have to choose between blowing it up and sucking it up. There's a third option you can try. It's designing your way out of it. That's what I did. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I spent my 45th birthday working alone in a hotel room, eating pizza out of a box. At 50, I walked out of a job 2.5 weeks before lockdown, and I spent the next 5 years figuring out what happened. So I've been through that slump. And if you've had your own version of, I can't carry on like this, you are exactly the person I've made this video for. If you want to redesign your midlife, there are 3 steps to follow. The first I call reflect and recalibrate. This is about getting really clear on what's going on in your life, because what you think is the problem is almost certainly not the actual problem. And I hear this all the time with a lot of the people I speak to. The most common one is they come to me and say, I need to quit my job. I just need to get out of where I am at the moment. And that's a symptom. It's not a cause. We need to unpick things, unravel things a bit, and find what the root cause is. You need to gather data on what's going on in your life, because you think you might know, but there are plenty of people that have spent a lot of time and effort in building the right solution to the wrong problem. My approach uses design thinking, and one of the most important elements of design thinking is that you get really clear on what the problem is before you even start thinking about a solution. That was me in lockdown. I had a plan A, and I thought I need to find a way to make this work, even though everything had been severely disrupted in lockdown. And I invested a lot of time and effort in that. And it was only when it became abundantly clear that that wasn't going to work that I had to come up with a plan B. But it was actually when a plan C came along that that was the real turning point for me. And that was the direction that I eventually moved in. This is about getting really clear on the areas that you want to focus on. And there are 5 tools that I use to do that. One of the most comprehensive is a Wheel of Life exercise. And I've put a link in the description to one I've developed specifically for midlife. I'll explain a bit more about the other tools towards the end. So this helps you to stop guessing and start to see what's really going on in your life. And you'll probably identify 1 or 2 priority areas for a redesign. But to be absolutely sure, you have to work through step 2. This is where things get really interesting. If you're a bit of an overthinker, this is really dangerous territory, because you'll probably hear yourself saying things like, I could never do that, or that'll never work, or this isn't the right time to make that kind of change. You will want to think through the detail of every option you come up with, and then you'll probably start talking yourself out of it. But you'll never know what's right unless you give it a try. Stage 2 is rethink and rediscover, because you're rethinking what's possible and you're rediscovering all of the resources you have that you can draw on. That plan C that I mentioned earlier was exactly this. It was rediscovering that an industry that I'd worked in 15 years earlier was actually still a really good fit for me. And that's the direction that I moved in. But the funny thing about being in this middle stage is that while there are all of these new things you want to explore, your brain's focus is on keeping you safe. It's not about making you happy. And anything it perceives as a threat, it's going to try and talk you out of. So in this phase, we have to trick your brain into feeling okay about running some small tests. These are low stakes experiments. You're not going to bet the house on something. This is just an opportunity to try something out to see how it goes. And often it goes better than expected. Sometimes it doesn't, but we still learn something, and we can take that learning forward into stage 3. You won't know whether something feels like the right direction unless you give it a go. Equally, you may have a hunch as to what is the thing you want to do, but I wouldn't commit to doing something and making a big change without experimenting first, without trying it out in some small way. And let me give you an example. My wife and I have this idea that we want to do a big road trip across the States when we turn 60. But we're not campers. We've never done anything like that before. And that would be a big commitment, seeing if we could survive 3 months on the road in close proximity to each other and living van life. So earlier this year, we thought we would prototype it. So we went out to the States, hired an RV and drove from Orlando to Boston. Had a great time, learned loads in terms of how we might approach this bigger trip. In fact, one of the biggest learnings is probably that we won't do 3 months all in one go, but 3 1-month trips broken up is probably going to suit us better. So I would always recommend giving something a try, build a prototype, try some small experiment before you make that big commitment. The other thing that's important here is you have to suspend judgment about what you think will work, because the thing you think is going to light you up might turn out to be something that you don't feel that passionate about. And equally, something that you think is a bit wacky, a bit outside the comfort zone, could actually really excite you and want to be something that you want to take further. You just have to trust the process. Herminia Ibarra's work on people making life transitions has shown that the people that take this test and learn approach are more successful more of the time than people that take one big leap. You're not committing to anything at this point. You're just gathering evidence. So trust the process, be curious, have some fun with it, be playful, and you might be surprised at the results. Now you've got real data from step 1 and you've got evidence from step 2. Step 3 is turning all of that into a plan and putting that plan into action. Think of it like architecture. You've done the survey, you've built and tested the scale model. Now you're going to construct the real thing. And it's going to take effort and it's going to mean making some changes. But now you're not guessing. You've got some real evidence of what's actually going to work. And that's what's going to make it worth it. That was me in 2024, starting to use my model for midlife redesign. I found 4 pro bono clients to work with, and we put this into action. Some things worked, often better than expected. Other things needed a bit more development. But this was all now based on real lived experience. This third stage is called Reconnect and Reimagine, because you're reconnecting with the things and activities that are most important to you, and you're starting to reimagine what your midlife could be like. There are various tools I use to put the plan into action. One of them is the 5% plan. So you're focusing on making 5% improvements each week. So small, consistent steps can bring about real change without having to do something radical or make that change all in one go. It doesn't have to be big gestures that make a statement. It's just showing up for yourself, staying consistent, and keep moving in the right direction. In the space of about 3 months, you can have a totally redesigned midlife taking shape. So that's my approach. Tried and tested, first on myself and then with real clients. Now, each of those stages has real depth, but doing the right things in the right order can move you from just having an idea to having an actual plan that 90 days later has got you into a totally different position. If you want to take it further, I regularly run free workshops on how to redesign your midlife in 90 days. We look at all 3 stages, all of the tools that I use with my one-to-one clients, and you leave with the beginnings of a plan taking shape. You don't need to blow your life up. Nobody in my workshops quits their job in week 1, but you also don't need to stay stuck. This is about being more intentional with the next chapter, not being more reckless. I post a new video on some aspect of redesigning midlife every week. So if you want to follow along, hit subscribe. And you can click the link below to reserve a spot in my next free workshop where we can start designing a future that you'll actually look forward to. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.